same public meeting, the same advertising process, the same 8 people attended that meeting. We heard from a number of the people who were present at that meeting that they recognized that planning fees had traditionally been low in the city of Niagara Falls. They felt that we should be phasing in the fees rather than raising them all at once. The work of the consultant was that we go to a full cost recovery, that for years the taxpayer has actually been subsidizing the cost of rezoning properties in the city of Niagara Falls. The taxpayer subsidizes the cost to process subdivisions, and since they benefit a specific owner. The whole premise of the study was that the person who benefits, that is the landowner, the developer, should actually be paying the full cost of the escalation in his land value due to various zoning. The report actually has a complete table of the number of fees, so that an official plan amendment, for instance, would rise from $1,200 per application to $12,000. These are based on actual staff times. The work that was done by the consultant looked at not only what the planning staff put into these reports, but they looked at every municipal staff person who dealt with these, so that when we receive an application, there's a staff person that actually opens the file, sets that up. We circulate to various departments. All of the departments have staff people who look at these. The comments then come back. They're put into a report. The report is prepared, brought to this council. There are bylaws prepared by legal division. Those costs are actually worked into this for their staff time, so that there's not a division in the municipality that isn't affected through the processing of these applications. I acknowledge that the fees are substantial, so what staff did was that they took into consideration the request by those who were present at the public meeting, and they're recommending, rather than full implementation of the fees to start in 2009, that we phase it in with a 50% increase in 2009, and that we increase the fees by another 50% in 2010 to bring us to full cost recovery. Staff would then examine at the end of 2010 whether or not there should be additional fee increases for 2011. So rather than bringing in any cost of living in 2010, we would just be implementing the recommendations of the consultant at this point. We are hoping that council will adopt the fees bylaw that's on the council agenda tonight. It will make a difference in terms of the 2009 council budget, and those deliberations will be ongoing with this council. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Carey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is exactly what we asked staff to do, to go out and get a report on what it would cost if we amortized all of the cost over the amount of permits and the fees that people come in and ask us. I got a bit of a problem with it because it's such a jump. Not that I want to stifle anyone from speaking. I was going to ask for it to be deferred, but I'll wait till everyone has a chance. I'd like to see the comparisons with our neighboring municipalities. I don't think it's any secret that we're in competition with neighboring municipalities for development. And before we put these into effect, I think it would be very important for this council to have a look at what our neighboring municipalities are doing. Alec, I don't know if you had a chance to have a look around as part of this process to see what Welland, St. Catharines, Fort Erie, maybe Mississauga, some of the municipalities which we would consider maybe competing for different projects. There's only a certain amount of development that's going to take place in the region. I think that developers have a set amount of money to invest, and I think that it would be important for us to look at what the other municipalities are doing, considering I think we're competing with them for development dollars. I think we need to see what the others are doing before we set our fees. Not that we're not going to have an increase, but I don't think we want to be, we certainly would not want to jump to be the absolute highest in the region under all of these headings. Right now, we seem to be the lowest from a couple of calls that I made, but I don't think we want to jump from the lowest to the highest, even if we phase it in. I also, I don't want to see the taxpayers subsidizing developers, but I don't want to see development dry up in our municipality altogether because our fee structure goes so over the, over the top. So I'd like to get a comment or make the motion, maybe comment from staff, some of the other councillors on possibly looking at comparisons before we make this motion.
Mr. Chair, I'm certain that our consultant can speak specifically to the municipalities that he examined with respect to fees and comparatives that he made, and I would like him to be able to answer Councillor Carrio's question specifically, but I would suggest to this council that municipalities such as St. Catharines are basically built out, so therefore they won't be excuse me, experiencing the same level of subdivision development that our municipality will be experiencing. Certainly similar situations are occurring in Grimsby as well in terms of a lack of development potential for new subdivisions. Most of the municipalities in the region don't receive the nature of the applications that we receive, either for high-rise hotels nor the complex types of applications that we receive. We just this year, approved another commercial development for the new Walmart down at McLeod Road. Again, 250,000 square feet. So we deal with substantially sized projects as well as significantly complex projects. Many of the other municipalities don't address. But I think that our consultant could answer those specific questions about comparators.
Okay, Mr. McDonald.
Good evening, through you, Mr. Chair. At a previous meeting of committee, when we presented the draft findings, at that time, members of that committee will be aware that part of the assignment was to produce quite a detailed impact analysis of what the city's new full cost building and planning fees would mean against a group of comparators. I have that presentation and that information with me. At your pleasure, I can either take a minimal amount of time and we can throw it up on the screen and I can speak to it, or I can give you a quick run through now. The group of comparators that we dealt with involved all of the Niagara region area municipalities, and from a full cost recovery basis, we wanted to look at what the change in the local government sector cost of doing business for a developer would be as a result of these changes. So we combined the impact of planning fees as well as development charges, and by planning fees it could be, depending on the scenario, a site plan and a rezoning, for instance, for a commercial comparison. Or on a residential side, it would have been a subdivision and a rezoning. And we looked at what these impacts would be across all of the Niagara area municipalities, both on a before and after basis. My firm has worked with a number of these municipalities as well as really all of the GTA growth municipalities in this exercise. And what I can say, first of all, from a benchmarking perspective, we have benchmarked the processing effort, i.e. the cost of actually moving through these applications. And the City of Niagara Falls' actual effort is significantly below the average, so we're looking at an efficient and streamlined process. We're then costing that effort, if you will, on sort of a billable hour basis to come up with these fees. And when we look at the aggregate impacts on residential properties and on industrial properties and on commercial properties, what we find is that the City of Niagara Falls is competitively positioned against the quote-unquote neighbors or competition in the area versus places such as Lincoln, for example, with considerable development capacity left, and the other sort of developable municipalities. It's tough to envision this, but I have a whole series of sort of stacked bar graph comparative analysis, which I can go through if it's the pleasure of committee. But what I can say is that there, in my professional opinion, there is no significant competitive disadvantage associated moving to full cost fees, and any competitive adjustment is certainly mitigated by the 50% phasing strategy that the city staff are recommending. So again, it's your call. I can pull that analysis up and we can look at it, or I can speak to the fact that in general the city's position is quite competitive.
I think Councillor Carrio's question was more in regards to 2010, where the city of Niagara Falls would stand with the area municipalities.
Right, and the analysis that I will show you is the analysis of full cost fees that would be implemented. So what you would be seeing in these pictures, in these graphs, is the full cost impact, which would be the combined impact of 09 and 10. In other words, the mature state that would come out the other end of the phasing. Okay. And the comparators are a variety of municipalities, some of who've already gone through this exercise and have already adopted full cost fees. Others that I haven't been retained by, I'm not privy to whether or not they're continuing with large taxpayer subsidies or not.
Okay. Councillor Carrio?
I'd like to see them. I think it's an important exercise, and I think it's worth taking a few minutes if you can do it.
Yeah, I'll need a little help from someone, perhaps on the tech side. I'm not familiar with your setup here, but we can quickly plug in my laptop computer, and I can show you anything you'd like to see.
Our techie, Mr. Arafita, is going to help you out with that.
No guarantees.
Let's get my plug so we don't power down.
I know that we also have at least one member of the public that's here to speak on this report. We have Mr. Muratori, and I'm sure that we might have others as well. If you like, yeah. If you like, sure, Mr. Muratori, if you'd like to speak now.
Probably appropriate, given the topic of conversation we're at right now. Let me start by saying that I'm here because in our firm we have a municipal law, administrative law practice. I'm not here representing a particular client. And we do not often do this, that we appear in front of a council and make submissions when we're not appearing on behalf of a client, because essentially we're advocates. We're here to propose things for clients. But we felt that having looked at this, there was reason to come and talk to you about it. Let me also say that we act for municipalities, so therefore we know what the drivers are as far as cost recovery, and the fact that municipalities are seeking to recover costs from the sources that give rise to the cost. I've looked at performing concept analysis, and it's true. It's basically a traditional cost analysis. You look at the unit of labor costs. You see how many units of labor costs go into a particular action, and you extrapolate that to come to the direct costs. And as far as I'm here tonight, I really find no fault with the methodology that is used. We get involved in this question of indirect costs. You get into some arbitrariness of what should be or should not be allocated to the cost. But essentially, at the end of the day, I'm not here to talk about necessarily what's in the report or find some fault with the report. I'm here to talk about what isn't in the report, and essentially what I think is missing. Essentially what I think is missing here is any kind of cost-benefit analysis. I see the cost, but I don't see where the benefit of development has been assessed. And quite frankly, I don't think anyone in this room, anyone, audience or whatever, would ever argue the fact that if today we were able to attract this municipality, that rarest of all birds, an industrial plant, which on the basis of your report would cost $305,000 for the development cost of that plant. Let's say it employed 200 people for the sake of argument. No one would ever argue that the increase of employment, the increase to the tax base, the increase of the spin-offs from that employment creates a general benefit to the municipality. And it's nothing to do with the cost of that development. It really is a general benefit to the municipality. And you don't have to stop at what happens. You can look at the tax base of industrial users as opposed to residential users, and commercial users as opposed to residential users. We know that, that industrial tax base and commercial tax base is more efficient and more profitable to the municipality. Everybody knows that. You can extrapolate that and also go to what happens in the case of a high-rise hotel. 300 rooms, employs probably in the range of 300 people, increase to the tax base. Once it's built, it's a positive benefit to the municipality. And the question, I guess I have to say to you is it wrong, in a sense, that where there is a general benefit, and I can't quantify it for you because there is no study that I see that's been done to do a true cost-benefit analysis, is it wrong that the general revenue not, in fact, support this and, in fact, promote this kind of activity? Shouldn't the general revenue, because it is going to derive a benefit from the development, should it not also contribute? What's that contribution supposed to be? I don't know. Is it 30% of the cost, 40%? I don't know, because there isn't an analysis in place. The issue here, quite frankly, is that element of impact has to be looked at as far as we are concerned. You have to look at it. You have to look at it both from a point of view of benefit, and you have to look at it from the point of competition, which, of course, is what Mr. Cario has raised in his question. Now, I did look at the chart that I think my friend here is going to present, and as I understand it, that's a chart that compares the municipalities, correct me if I'm wrong, on a full cost recovery basis. Is that correct? That chart that's in your report?
Maybe when it's an appropriate time, Council, maybe I can give you sort of a full-body response to that question in my technical explanation. I hear the question, and I will respond to it.
All right. Because we did look at other municipalities. In other words, we looked at their actual charges to date. Municipalities that are currently charged. We've even looked at some of them who have published it, their costs for 2009. And I'll pass this out so you can take a look at it. So there is, in fact, these are actual charges to date. And if you look at it, and we've shown your existing and your proposed for January the 1st, 2010, which would be when the second tranche kicks in the proposed increase. And you will see that there is a dramatic difference between what is being proposed in Niagara Falls and what is proposed in St. Catharines, Thorold, Fort Erie, City of Welland. And we didn't look at all of them, quite frankly. We do know that that Town of Niagara on the Lake, for instance, has fairly high fees at this point. But quite frankly, there's a reason why they have fairly high fees at this point. And it is a municipality that traditionally has not really been friendly to development. And perhaps there's a reason for it. In any event, at the end of the day, all economic activity is affected by cost. Doesn't matter. I mean, there's all kinds of drivers that affect whether a business or a developer located in one particular location or another. The cost of labor, communications, transportation, et cetera. They can go on and on down the list. But there's also the actual cost of development. So essentially, I think that we asked 3 questions, and I don't have the answers for you. I only have the questions. What is the benefit conferred by development in this municipality? Do we honestly believe there is no benefit? And if there is, then you should go to full cost recovery. If there is a collateral benefit, then someone should value that benefit. What should be the size of the increase? And whether it will negatively impact the City of Niagara Falls from a competitive point of view. And quite frankly, I guess we're surprised to see that there isn't a report by your economic development officer that comments on that aspect of it, because it seems to go hand in hand with the action that you are proposing to take. And finally, quite frankly, I guess what surprises us most of all is the timing. I mean, we are seeing all levels of senior government, whether it be the province or the feds, being asked at this particular point in time to provide economic stimulus because we are heading into what could potentially be a very serious recession. It seems to be, that request appears to be completely contrary to what is suggested here. We're actually going to bring in an increased cost, which certainly cannot possibly have the effect of stimulating that type of activity. And that's not to say, by the way, that we don't believe that your charges are too high now. There's obvious recognition that they have to move, and move substantially. But I think this indicates to us that you will be the most expensive municipality in this region as far as costs are concerned. Those are my submissions. Thank you very much for the opportunity to let me speak.
Do you have any questions of Mr. Muratori? Councillor Carey.
Just a comment, Mr. Chairman, and that's where I was going to go down that road that Mr. Muratori's already touched on after we get our report from our consultant, that it was at the back of my mind that are we going to stifle development in our community by going from what might be the lowest fees in the peninsula to the highest fees in the peninsula. That's where I was going to go with this after I hear our consultant. Nice report, Mr. Muratori. I'll call you next time I can get you to do that for me. That was pretty good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
What you see scrolling through here are the early stages of the methodology in this report. I'll quickly draw your attention to this slide to explain that, as the gentleman in question noted, this is a costing analysis. Each application that goes through the development review process has a cost. Costs are stark. Some will pay for it. Existing ratepayers in the city of Niagara Falls will pay for these costs, or applicants will pay for these costs. Let me explain quickly here that the front three blocks, the three green boxes you see on the slide, represent the actual processing effort, hands on the file, of your staff from various pieces of the organization on these files. As well, you see a flow-through of indirect costs, which are directly permitted by legislation to cover the cost of payroll and payables. Imagine we could process a development application if we don't pay people or involve indirect costs. And those indirect costs are explicitly recognized and acknowledged in statute. So there's nothing untoward in including indirect costs in the processing here. We've taken a hard look at the shares, and the shares of indirect costs equate with the other additional 30-plus municipalities we have done these kinds of studies for. So that's a quick comment on the costing itself. Benchmarking. What you'll see here is a benchmark of the actual processing effort of these planning applications in question against a 9-city golden horseshoe index of processing effort. And you can see in every category the average amount of processing effort against the comparators is higher than the city of Niagara Falls processing effort. So the fees that you see here today are not a product of inefficiencies. They are the product of the full cost of processing being reflected in the new fees. Historically, the fees that we were dealing with contained large and significant property tax subsidies for the development community here in the city of Niagara Falls. As per council's direction, staff have brought back a more realistic full cost analysis of this reality. So again, from a processing effort point of view, this is not a question of administrative problems in the way that fees are being dealt with.
Just a question, Mr. McDonald. When you show the city of Niagara Falls, the costs that you have associated with our municipality, where are those numbers from?
These are processing minutes from the detailed costing analysis that we did. We set up the business process steps, 30, 40 steps per application process. And staff worked with me to develop detailed time, effort estimations for each staff person involved in each step. Think of it as a time and labor study, a time and motion study of the actual processing cost, the actual processing effort that staff are expending on these processes. The other 9 GTA municipalities work with my firm in exactly the same process. So we have a apples-to-apples benchmarking of processing effort for these various categories.
Then there's various expenses that get added to those. Is that what you're telling us?
Once we understand the relative proportion of effort from staff that are being consumed in these cost buckets, if you will, then we can move the money according to the same share of effort. So if Todd McDonald is involved in 4 different categories by fixed percentages of my effort across each of them, according to these processing minutes, then the same percentage of my salary and wages and the indirect costs associated with payroll and payables all move into those categories according to the time. So the time estimation leads the costs into the various fee categories. So it was an activity-based costing analysis, and it's been confirmed by independent review as an industry best practice now. These kinds of studies have been done, easily 50 or 60 of them in the last number of years for legislative compliance reasons, with the Building Code Act, and for cost recovery purposes with growth municipalities. And this municipality's methodology is consistent with industry practices in that regard. Now, recognizing that that is the approach that we're taking, I want to stop for a minute and speak to this question of benefit. Our exercise dealing with these kinds of fee schedules has in fact recognized the concept of general benefit. We understand that when a development application comes forward, there are 2 schools of benefit. The primary benefit, I think we can all recognize, is associated with the economic benefit that we get from moving land to a higher order of use. The applicant is the primary benefit in this process. But we do acknowledge that you're quite right, there is a second beneficiary in managing and shaping growth through planning processes, and that is the general public. Our analysis factored in a 20% discount, a general benefit discount on planning fees as part of this exercise to recognize general benefit. Now, I'm the first one to recognize that that is an arbitrary recognition of general benefit. There is no science here that suggests that general benefit is equal to 29.8745% of total benefit, but we have recognized it at the level of policy, and the costing analysis reflects that policy recognition. So the phasing of fees going forward has in fact already recognized the concept of general benefit in the way we have costed planning processes into these fees. And that was acknowledged in the technical report received by my firm, for anyone who's a masochist and actually read it, chapter 4.44, page 4.8 in the technical study for anyone who has it. There's explicit explanation of the general benefit discount. So we have in fact recognized that question. The impact analysis that we did quickly, we looked at a residential subdivision, and we looked at the impact, the change of doing business. The blue slide that you see is the relative stable, largest part of the cost of doing business for a development applicant, which is the development charge. And you'll see, perhaps tough for you to read across the bottom here, but we have Lincoln to the far left, Niagara on the lake beside them, both clients of mine, and we have the City of Niagara Falls, its relative shift in position. So in fact, the City of Niagara Falls does not shift relative in cost effectiveness and cost efficiency position against the 2 developmental land capacity driven municipalities in Niagara Falls. So we indeed have all the comparators here, not just a selection of comparators for you to review in the report. On both the residential side as well as the retail commercial side. In this case, Lincoln continues to be at the far left. You can see here the combination of building applications in yellow. The planning fee changes are in red and blue, those very small pieces at the bottom. And you can see the relative change in position. But never does the City of Niagara Falls become the most expensive jurisdiction in this regard. Bottom line is that it's development charges and not planning fees that are going to impact, if any fee does, the location decisions of any development or the timing decisions. I've seen that in 30-plus analyses. These fees are a relatively minor portion of the overall local government costs for an applicant trying to do business in any given municipality. The mythology that somehow people pick up and leave land that they're in the process of developing over a relatively small percentage of their total costs is just that. It's mythology. And these studies done in over 30 jurisdictions have confirmed that to be the case. The question of the timing in the economy, I'm completely sympathetic to that perspective. Most of the full cost recovery work that's been done in the province has already been completed in most growth municipalities. Staff, I think, have quite reasonably recognized the timing questions associated with the movement to full cost by suggesting phasing. What the phasing, of course, means is that existing ratepayers will continue to subsidize development applications during 2009 to some proportion, making a compromise that seems realistic to me from a public policy point of view based on cost recovery. Some of that subsidy will be reduced in 2009, and the remainder of the subsidy will be reduced in 2010, which again is consistent practice with the over 30 jurisdictions that we have worked with. At the end of the day, Council can see in this slide that the potential subsidy associated with planning fees in the absence of action by Council is in the neighborhood of $800,000. The net position that we're seeing here, full cost processing costs of $950,000 approximately. You can see relatively low existing fee revenues of $132,000. So for many years, the development community in Niagara Falls enjoyed a significant processing subsidy funded by either building permit payers or by general taxpayers. And this exercise is about reducing that to more sustainable levels regarding the current economic circumstances. So staff's approach is a measured, quite frankly, more measured than the approach taken in many jurisdictions which have immediately moved to full cost. Staff's phasing plan will eliminate approximately half of that subsidy in the current year, i.e. creating tax room of a certain amount, but not all of the tax room will be clawed back for use for other competing priorities. Only half of it will be. The second half of that property tax room would be recovered in the second year of the phasing process. So to sum up from an impact analysis point of view, I don't think there's an adverse competitive effect here, which is maybe why from an economic development point of view versus a taxpayer cost recovery point of view, the city has, from a public policy point of view, adopted the position.
Okay. Councilor Carrier.
Thank you very much. That was very helpful to see the all of the fees and all of the costs, not just the fees. But my questions are not being critical of the efficiency of our department. My questions are just suggesting it's good business on our part to look at the fees and take the other benefits of stimulating development by lowering other than just the average fees. Because we've asked before about being able to offer any financial incentives. I think we've all asked when we're looking at attracting a certain development, whether it be industrial or commercial. And we've been told that we cannot give anyone any financial incentives. This might be the only thing that we can do by keeping our fees, not to say we don't change because we're on the low side, and we shouldn't be on the bottom end. But it might be the only thing that we can do to give ourselves one leg up against what we might call the competitive cities, because we can't offer any financial incentives trying to attract business or development.
Okay, thank you. Any other members of council wish to speak to the report? Mayor Saucy.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe that Councillor Carrier points out some very interesting observations. I do like the comments that I hear, though, from the consultants in being able to justify this and looking at how the costs are assimilated by the taxpayers. And obviously, the taxpayer is always concerned about having to pay once or twice or whatever the case might be. We do offer incentives in different areas by the creation of our CIPs, the community improvement plans, whether it be in the citywide improvement plan that we have for industry, as you know, brownfield properties. In particular, we do have a CIP for the downtown redevelopment where there are concessions made, and also for the historic Drummondville or Main and Ferry. So we are still trying to attract development in those areas, and we make concessions that we're allowed to do, and those are the only areas, as you know, that we would get approval from the ministry on without having to be considered as bonusing. So while we're sympathetic to that, I appreciate the fact that the phase-in development is certainly more easily assimilated than obviously a one-time impact. But when you see the numbers, they're fairly conclusive, and I have a hard time, even though I'm sympathetic to development, I'd like to see development in our city, I have a hard time having to have it burdened by the existing taxpayer. So I believe development should pay for development, as we've always talked, so I think that's the point. The unfortunate part is that it appears to be striking on those who are either not in the home market, who have no existing home to compare to, that they would be able to sell because the redevelopment of new, or the development of new homes and new subdivisions would be creating greater value for the resales. And I think that's always the challenge you face. So really all these costs are passed on to really the first-time buyer, which makes it even more difficult for the affordability of a first-time buyer to purchase. So unfortunately, that's the negative side of this. And when you're not in the marketplace, of course, you have nothing to, as I said, offset the cost because you had an existing resale. That would certainly be worth more money because it costs more to develop the new property. So I think that's one area that we should certainly be sympathetic to as well. But I guess I can't dispute the fact that Mr. McDonald has come up with some very conclusive evidence to show us where we sit in the marketplace.
Okay. Any other members of council wish to make a comment? Councillor Maves.
Just looking at the numbers right off the bat, I mean, they're staggering, really. If I was a developer and had to look at that kind of cost, it's just amazing to think that. And yet, if they're actual cost to the city, I can see the point. I'm really like the idea we're getting the actual costs on these things, although I think it's just too much. And in these economic times, it's very difficult to put these kind of things through. I like what one developer said in the report. He could stand at 25% over 4 years, possibly. I think that's a better scenario. But I think maybe somebody can help me out here with the impact this would make on the totals when we're looking. If we went to the full fees right off the bat in 2009, can somebody tell me what that would, how much money that would? That's a total of. Is that the 852?
Yes.
So it'd be nice to get that money back, but I think it's just almost impossible to put those sort of fees through. I think that possibly, and I like the 25% idea. So over the 4 years, I think it'd be more reasonable. And even if that's too high, we can probably adjust that as we go. If we get some more exact figures, or if automation can make things cheaper, or some way we can find it, because I think in these economic times, it's very, very difficult to put that through.
Okay, would you like to make a motion at all, Councillor Mason?
Well, I think I should refer to Councillor Carrier. He has a better handle, and I think he's done a little more research than I, and I think he has a better idea of what he would like to do on it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I concur with Councillor Maves on we have to get there. I just think just biting it off in 2 bites might be too much. Maybe we should try it in 4, 25, 25, 25, 25, give the developers and the business community 4 years rather than 2 years. I mean, we were the ones that, set our staff out on this mission to as user pay. The only thing is that if you go along Mr. Muratori's thinking, you can say this is a subsidy. But if we attract a couple of major businesses or major developments, they offset the tax base as a whole anyways. So is it really a subsidy? Are we really subsidizing? If we bring in $10, $12 million of extra revenue because we attract a development, it's a subsidy as well. So that keeps the other rate payers' taxes down as well. So I think we have to do it conscientiously, and I'd be prepared to say we will get here, but I wouldn't want to do it over 2 years. I'd want to do it over 4 years. 25, 25, 25, and 25 over 4 years rather than just in 2 years. I'd make that a motion.
You'd make that a motion. Would you like staff to report back then in 2013? Because right now it's 2011 because it's a 2-year plan.
I think that we probably should just do what we're in our term. We do 25% this year, 45% next year. And then I think that's maybe as far as this council should go.
Okay, Mr. Arafita?
Well, I don't think it'd be too difficult for staff to report back every year, just to show, these are how many permits we had, if there was any reflection on the fees causing any dip in development. We usually do those kind of reports anyways.
That's fine. Then I would amend that to say we would just do 25% of it. 25% increase starts January 1 if you want to review it at the end of that term. Assuming we do another 25% the following year, that'd be fine with me too, Mr. Chairman.
But the motion is for 1 year, sorry, Councillor? Or 2?
I do too.
2 years.
25 and 25.
Okay, thank you. And I have Councillor Diodati.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with the idea of stretching it out. I also agree with the fact that development's got to pay for development. We can't have it on the taxpayer's back. But my question is, if we stretch it over those 2 more years, how would that adjust? Maybe I direct this to you, Mr. Chair, the consultant. How would that change our numbers? I mean, would you be looking at a different number if we were looking at 4 years down the road rather than 2? That'd be my only question.
Just on that point, Mr. Chairman, I think at the end of the second year, even at the end of the first year, we could always readjust it.
I think that's why recommendation number 2 was in there. Is so that staff could recommend any changes after the full implementation of it. Sure, Mr. McDonald, did you want to comment?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I'm just responding to the councillor's query. What you'll see in this consolidated modeling table before you is the net size of the property tax subsidy, if you will, currently benefiting planning application applicants in the city of Niagara Falls, $813,000. So if you want to think of this in sort of $200,000 chunks, if you will.
Sorry, where's that number?
This is in the second column of the table under planning, the planning application. So you can see that the total processing costs of the applications are $945,000. The average historic revenues, according to average levels of development, so the processing costs and revenues are associated with the same years, is about $132,000. So the public, the position before you is the question of how quickly do you want to relieve existing taxpayers of the $813,000 burden, which is the equivalent, I believe, as Mr. Harrison, finance staff, but I think roughly the equivalent of at least 2% on the tax rate. So the question is whether you want to relieve existing taxpayers of subsidizing development applications by $200,000, $200,000, $200,000, $200,000, or under staff's plan, eliminate a $400,000 subsidy and then eliminate a $400,000 subsidy. So it's a balancing question. It's a public policy question, and really as a consultant, I have no opinion on that. That's a governance question. But I can tell you what the fiscal impacts are. The fiscal impacts are a slower reduction in a long-term subsidization of applications by taxpayers.
Mr. Chair, no, I understand what you said. However, there's going to be carrying costs if we stretch this out over 4 years. My question is, would it be a different number that we're trying to get to absorb those carrying costs for those extra 2 years? I don't know if I'm making myself clear.
I think I understand what you're saying now. In theory, as we go forward, the actual cost of processing may go up subsequently in subsequent years.
Correct.
So what you would in essence be doing is postponing the indexing of these fees over those years, in theory, to a future year. So a 4-year phase-in would push out 3 years of indexing costs into the 5th year. The current phasing approach would push out only 1 year of indexing costs into a subsequent year. Those costs will eventually have to be recovered in theory at that point in a new costing exercise, or indeed not recovered and contributing to, again, a larger property tax subsidy.
Okay, Councillor Mace.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm just looking at this too, and regardless, even if we receive no apps at all, we'd still have to pay some staff cost in there anyway. So, I mean, the total effect is very confusing when it comes down to all that, because even if, as they say, we didn't get any planning changes, we'd still have to pay staff a certain amount of this money anyway. But the other thing is, I'm a little concerned about the budget too. Is this going to take a big... Has this already been figured into our budget for 2009, the new numbers, the increases?
No, the new numbers, the revenue figures have only been modestly adjusted because we weren't aware of what Council's direction would be on this. So there is some impact. To talk to your point, through the chair, the revenue figures that we expect to come from any rate increase is a product of the rate increase on the fee, plus the volume. So as many people have talked about, if there's a decline, and it seems like there may be a decline because of the economy, we would anticipate a lower number of applications because of the economy. However, that would be offset by a slightly higher increase in the fee, so that would be offset. If everything was to stay the same and the number of applications were to stay the same, we would see a corresponding increase based on the rate increase that you see. So once again, taking an approach where you're phasing it in over a longer period of time would allow us to report back to you on what the impact would be on any on the application process, and we'd be able to identify if there is in fact that impact has been outlined.
So this basically would have a modest effect on your budget?
It'd have a modest impact. It's the 813 that you see as the net position we've as the consultant has indicated, the approach that he's taken is looking at all of the costs associated with that. The revenues, which is the line above that, the existing fee revenues, is based on a certain level of volume. If that level of volume goes up or goes down, that impacts the revenues, obviously. And if we raise the fees and with the same volume, that number would go up. But you're quite correct. There would be a residual cost, irrespective of the number of applications that we have, because we have staff ready to serve.
With that, I'd like to second Councillor Carrio's motion.
Absolutely. And Councillor Carrio, did you wish to make a comment?
The only comment I had was covered by Councillor Maves, is that, you know, if we chased any applications away, we're still going to be faced with paying $945,000 if we don't get any applications. But a 25% increase, it's 25% on the official plan amendment, is still going to be over 100% on the old. It's going to be a jump of 100% on the old rate. It's 25% of the proposed 2010 fee, which is still, as far as I'm concerned, a huge jump in all of these figures.
Okay, Mayor Selsey.
Yes, Mr. Just a point of qualification, if we could have Mr. McDonald explain to us the net position with respect to the bottom line on this chart. I'd appreciate seeing all these departments in respect to what his recommendation is in respect of the fees that we're charging today.
Mr. Chair, if I understand the question is regarding sort of the market position of the fees that we're paying today. Those fees are extraordinarily low versus any benchmarking comparison that we have done of fee schedules across the Golden Horseshoe. There are larger than average, deep, persistent subsidies associated with the current fee levels. What I would recommend, if you want to understand the relative burden of your fees against those in other jurisdictions, I would quote again the benchmarking of processing effort. The costs are related to effort. The effort is extremely efficient. So therefore, the costs that we're looking at are extremely efficient processing costs to recover. The fee levels that you see in the fee schedule in our report are, even at the full cost level, are significantly below the Golden Horseshoe processing fees in most growth municipalities in the GTA and across this region. So even the quote-unquote full cost fees are comparatively low. The cost of processing and moving through a subdivision process in Niagara Falls is orders of magnitude less expensive than in Mississauga or in Burlington or in Vaughan or in Brampton, other sort of Golden Horseshoe growth engines. So my technical opinion is that comparison against the base level of fees that you have now has to be taken with a grain of salt, and we have to recognize that those fees were extremely ineffective in recovering significant portions of the processing. What we need to recognize is the movement forward to new fees. As Mr. Harrison said, there's a compounding risk factor that Council needs to be aware of. If the volumes that you're facing going into a recession are significantly lower than the average historic volumes we used in this cost, that creates revenue jeopardy, even if you go to the full cost fees. What a phasing will do is it will combine the risk associated with potentially lower volumes with the risks associated with potentially generous phasing. So the maximum risk scenario for you to consider here is significantly lower volumes than you've seen in the last 5 years, which were the historic volumes this costing was based on, combined with a longer multi-year phase-in plan. Do not assume that simply by adopting one quarter, that you will increase your revenues by 25% every year. Chances are, regardless of what you do with these fees, your overall aggregate revenue number may well go down from the numbers that you see in this exercise. If you want to accelerate the reduction in potential generated revenue, then combining lower than previously forecast volumes with a 4-year phase-in will potentially have an adverse revenue effect. So I'm not here to advise you on the budget, but those are the mechanics of how fees work. Volumes times unit price. You discount the unit price to 25% of the full cost, and you see lower than expected volumes. It'd be difficult to go back to staff and say, why is the revenue number as low as the revenue number is? It's not the number in the consultant's report. That's because the consultant's report looked at the past to extrapolate the future. It looked at historic volume levels, not the new subprime mortgage driven realities that we might be looking at now.
Okay, thank you. There is a motion on the floor that the planning application fees be increased by 25% January 1st, 2009. Accordingly, another 25% January 1st, 2010. And that staff bring back an annual report to council, and that a notice be placed in the local newspaper informing the public of the change in fees. Are there any questions or comments to the motion? Councillor, do you have that?
My question is, why aren't we going to automatically put in 25 over 4, and then if staff have to adjust that number, why don't we put the full amount that we need to recover in over the 4 years rather than just 2?
Friendly amendment? Sure. So then in 2011, the other 25%, and in 2012, the other 25%. Okay. Amendment is so noted. Are there any other questions or comments to the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Moving on, we have report BDD 2008-04 dealing with the OPG Marketing Fund. I believe once again, move the report by Councillor Carey, Councillor Thompson. Do I have a seconder to that? Mayor Salsi. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak to this report? The OPG Marketing Fund? OPG Marketing Fund? Yes?
Thank you.
Gentlemen, I'm going to offer you a little bit of relief from this competition clause that you have. Everybody seems to be competing for this and competing for that, competing for something else. We are not competing for anything in Niagara Falls. We have a monopoly, and we are going to be acting as gracious hosts. We've never had a situation where the entire region has got behind an enterprise like we have. We entertained 30,000 school children in the last 3 years from Wainfleet, Port Colborne, Niagara-on-the-Lake. They feel just as comfortable in Niagara Falls as they do right at home. We have every support from St. Catharines, the commerce people in St. Catharines, what you would call the creme de la creme in the investment community. They supported us 100%. So we're in a different position. We're not in competition. We're gracious hosts, totally different. And I can tell you, quite frankly, it's such a sincere, beautiful feeling that I have that these people are behind us, and I run into it. Niagara Falls, you know where I run into it? That really bothered me? The foundations. We had several fundraisers, and the foundations, well, the money's being raised here in Niagara Falls. We don't want it to go to Welland. I said, I beg your pardon? Oh, we're raising the money in Welland. We don't want to go to St. Catharines. I don't get it. Where are you coming from? You mean the children in Welland are not as important to me as the children in Niagara Falls? So basically, we are community partners with the Ice Dogs. We are a regional production company. And as the Niagara Falls people, we are gracious hosts because we have a monopoly. We have actors from all over the world. They're professionals. Our budget is absolutely phenomenal. Like, it's mind-boggling. Lately, we signed down with the Niagara Parks Commission. I had a nice meeting with John Holler for about an hour and a half. Marine Land's on board with us. I got a phone call from the Blue Jays. They might want to do a package with us. Our dilemma right now is we don't have, when you talk to production people company, they spend a quarter of their budget on advertising. And we've got an untapped market just south of the border. Now, I talked to the American wineries, Arrowhead, Mr. Duncan. I've talked to the hotels over there. I've talked to the people that want to get on board on the American side. And that's where our market is really lacking. We don't have to worry about the region. You've seen our advertising. Everybody has seen how we've done it. Now we have the concierges in Toronto sending us business. We've advertised in the Sun, and we have people come down the road from Toronto. Look at the competitive market. If you go and see a good show in Toronto, you're going to pay $125 and $50 to park. You can come in our town with any of the 15 restaurants that we have on board and see our show and have a great meal for $60. We've got a competitive edge that you can't beat. Now, the dilemma that's going to face you people is, how do we capitalize on a winner? And if you've got behind us, and I talked to Mr. Bradley and I've talked to Kim, it has to start here. It has to start at the local level. We have to deal with the Niagara Falls Council. From there, it goes to them. It goes to region, it goes to province, and then it goes federal. And we have the capacity, and this is why I have dedicated so much time out of my dental practice to come here. I want to make Niagara Falls the theater destination of North America. Now, you could talk about Broadway. I hate Broadway. You could talk about Toronto. I hate Toronto. I don't like the ambiance. I don't like the traffic. I don't like the manners. Our actors and actresses come here from all over Canada, and they want to buy here. They love it here. They love the people. They love the surroundings. They love the beauty. They love everything about us. Why shouldn't we capitalize on it? Now, I'm happy to report now we have the wineries on board. The wineries, the other day we had a fundraiser for the Walker Family Cancer Center. We had Herndon, Henry Pelham, Joseph Estates, Rockaway Glen, and Coyote Run, plus a brewery. And they got behind us 100%. Plus Elfie's Army is a group of people out of St. Catharines, Archie Katzman, Joey Carlamusto, and Elfie's family. So basically, what we have accomplished in Niagara Falls in 3 years is amazing. And you can be proud of it, too, in the city council, because you guys got behind us in the beginning. Now, the question is, how do we move on from here to get known in the frontier? This is the thing. If we can get to Western New York, from there, who knows where we can go. We have really hit a home run here, and what we really need is government to get behind us, starting at this local level. Then I want to go to Peter Partington and say, look, I need your help. Then I want to go to Kim, say, hey, Kim, I need your help. Mr. Bradley already told me, get their help, and I'm behind you. So the ball is really in your court. Where we go from here is up to you, because this whole thing has been accomplished with two people, Linus and myself. And you take a look at develop downtown. Now, this is where it got me mad. There's about 50 people or 60 people promoting downtown. Nobody's promoting us but Linus and I. And we have tied together the hotels, the restaurants, the wineries, John Holler, which is impossible, the Parks Commission, and all the schools. So we need your support to really grow. Now, I'll leave it up to you guys. Okay. Any questions?
Does any members of council have any questions of Dr. Lococo? Dean?
Just to provide some context, the next report we're on is actually the OPG Marketing Fund, and I appreciate Dr. Lococo coming forward on that, because his original request to council was related to the $50,000 that you had allocated through the OPG fund to the downtown during the summer. But his request is actually part of Report D, and we're actually, Report C is sort of Surge's budget on the OPG fund going forward. So that's the context.
So let me understand that OPG fund was designated for downtown?
No. Perhaps Dean can explain.
Just to explain, and I think we've explained this before, there was $50,000 during the summer from the OPG funds that went towards the downtown events for help with marketing and staff support. And I know when you heard about that, that prompted you to send in a letter asking for, you know, obviously some consideration by council for your worthy theater endeavor.
But you know, what people really don't know is the reason I got involved with this in the first place was Mordecai. Mordecai and Linnesan presented me with a video that said that theater, where have you been? And they paid $35,000 for it, and it was narrated by Sir Christopher Newton, and it convinced me so much that I thought, you know, that makes sense, and that's why I got on board. But then when I went to downtown, who got me instigated in the first place, and I said, okay, let's do it, they shot me down. I couldn't believe it. The BIA says, no, we're not behind. It's not downtown. I said, well, you got to cultivate an interest in theater before I can bring it to the Seneca. That's where my prime goal. If the original video had our prime theater was going to be Rosberg's, the second theater was going to be the Seneca, and the third theater was going to be the old high school, or the old city hall, where we were going to have something like Cinderella, or, you know, smaller productions. The big production was going to be, we did a feasibility study on it too, the old Rosberg building, and we could have turned that into a 800-seat theater, and the Seneca was going to be sort of like a cabaret. We could have accommodated all three. But what happened basically was the foundation got pulled out from underneath me through the middle of the thing, and Mordecai had a change of heart, went the other direction. I said, Mordecai, you're missing the boat. Instead of spending all this money on people jumping off like a helicopter or so it's crazy, and Elvis impersonators, we could have had world-class theater right down here right now. And all it would have taken was the city to go up with Mordecai, knock the back end out of the Seneca, put stage back there where you got wing space, and you got what, for $5 million, you've got what Burlington paid $19 million for. And now that would have opened up downtown. Now you got world-class theater downtown. And so it's mind-boggling to me how things get detached so that we're not working in the same direction. A good team sort of corresponds with each other, makes each other's feelings known, and then works forward to one common goal to develop Niagara Falls, develop the region. And we all know right now the economic base in the region is horrible. Like, you watch what happened in Welland. Welland's done, they lost John Deere, they lost Canadian Tire, TRW's gone, General Motors is gone. If they deflate the tax base of the region, Niagara Falls is going to have to take up the slack because we're the only ones. We got tourism. We're lucky. We got the falls, and we got, you know, we got the casino. But these other places, they're in trouble. So basically, we are in a whole different scenario. We are the leaders. We used to have to say, well, St. Catharines was a leader because of the automotive industry. I think the City Council of Niagara Falls is in a position that they've never been in before in their entire life, and I hope they have I'm sure they have it. They have the experience, like Wayne and Teddy, they have the experience, and you fellas, to be able to grab the reins. You guys are the leaders now, and steer the region in the right direction. Because if the regional tax base ever goes down the drain, it's going to be all on us. So we really have to be very sharp and give leadership. Instead of being followers, we're leaders. So I'm going to leave that with you people. I hope that you support us. I'm praying that you support us because I think it's almost limitless what we can achieve with the programs that have been presented to Silver Mist Productions. There's companies in Toronto want to do business with it. There's the concierges in Toronto want to do business. The bus companies want to do business with it. All we need is government behind us now. We have not had one support in the 3 years we've been in existence. We have not had. CERC came in, and the government threw their support behind CERC. The Park Commission, of course, was one of their partners. $7 million cost our city people in bankruptcy charges because they couldn't make it. We've survived that. We've proved that we can do it. So I think we have earned your support and your confidence and your trust. And not just the city of Niagara Falls. I think the region, the province, and the country should get behind us. And I think if they do, who knows where we can go. I'll leave that with you, fellas.
Okay, thanks. Any questions or comments of Dr. Lococo? Okay. No. There is a motion on the floor to approve the recommendation for the OPG Marketing Fund. Any questions or comments to the motion? Councillor Iannone? Oh, it's already moved. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you. Last report we have is CD 2008-14 dealing with the review of the events and activities of downtown in 2008. Question, Councillor Carrier?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question on the CIP application procedures. Go to the third page from the back, not the back page, the next one. One back from that. Just a question on the procedures, on our grants. Could we have issued grant money to someone that doesn't have a building permit? Is that possible? That's the way I'm reading this one. There was an alteration permit required, but not applied for. CIP monies were issued. Can I have that question answered? How that could happen, and if it happened?
Mr. Arrears?
I don't know how it could happen, but it did happen.
Is that our procedure? Can someone, who's in charge of this fund doling out the money?
Mr. Hurlovich?
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, it is handled by the planning department. We were trying to bring on a number of improvements to the downtown to correspond with the Spring Alicious program, and perhaps this was an oversight. It certainly isn't part of the procedures. Certainly we try and get all of the municipal requirements taken care of as part of the process.
So then I can be assured that that's not our procedure or policy, and that won't happen again?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Ioannoni? Oh, I'm sorry. Councillor Thompson was ahead of you.
Thank you. First of all, I want to say that the report brings out some negativity with respect to what is happening in the downtown area, and in my opinion doesn't highlight the positive aspects of the whole transformation and transition that is taking place downtown. We all know what happened here 2 years ago, where people were looking for $36 million to redevelop the downtown. Mr. Gruen came in probably 4 or 5 years ago and started working on a plan to buy up some properties and to try to do something with not a dying downtown, probably a dead downtown that had little opportunity for revitalization. I think he's bought up somewhere in the area of 60 properties. There have been numerous building permits taken out for development, and my compliments to the staff if they missed a couple, because they probably helped some of the businesses get started. The report tries to indicate that the amount of money spent on the 3 major events didn't generate the revenue, and there were some deficiencies as far as the funding of that. Well, they were free events. Where does the revenue come? It's accrued to the properties downtown. And what is our whole objective? Our whole objective is to try to revitalize the downtown and make sure it comes back to life. And we have a developer who is attempting to do that and has done probably one of the most amazing jobs that I've seen happen in a downtown anywhere in a very short period of time. If you drive up and down the streets now, there are cars where there were none before. There are some substantial art and culture stores. There's a couple of excellent restaurants, and the future, in my opinion, if they get the support and if they are able to hold through the winter, and this was an opportunity for us to show our support through the CIP funds, not through the general tax rate, but through the CIP funds that were designated to try to give them a push and a start to help revitalize the downtown. The events that were held, they're suggesting they should do something until they get it right. Well, the first time you have an event, if you've been involved, and I was involved in one, as a matter of fact, and it wasn't easy. There was a tremendous amount of time, volunteer time from a lot of people put in to make these things happen. And my first reaction when I was asked was, why don't you have the downtown revitalized first before you start having events? And they said, no, that's not the way you do it. And I agree with them now. You have events to get people to come down to see what's there, to generate the activity, to make sure that something is going to happen. So I think what's happening downtown is certainly amazing, and there'll probably be people traveling across Canada talking about Niagara Falls and the wonderful thing that they did in revitalizing their downtown. We have a long way to go. We have certainly some that may not make it because a lot of the rents are subsidized at the present time, but there's an opportunity. And if they get the theater, like Mr. Lococo was talking about, and there is an opportunity to get the Seneca, which is being worked on right now, and some of the other opportunities, the Buttery from Niagara-on-the-Lake, by next summer, if we're supportive and do everything we can to keep this going, we're going to have something that we can all be proud of, and at least say that we've all committed to. And it's in our official plan that the downtown of the city of Niagara Falls is certainly a major issue and a support from this council, even in our official plan. So I read the report, and I know that there were some costs involved. I would have rather see them go on to some storefronts and some other improvements, but we're in a crucial period right now, and I think that we have to be able to be flexible to make sure that this moves along. I'm also very interested in the motion that was made a few weeks ago to get a committee together to work on this, to give them that support so that when it does come to council, there's an advocacy group here to support some of the issues and what they're attempting to do. I think that Mr. Lococo's issue will also be discussed, and there's no question in my mind what Silver Miss Productions have done for theater and arts in this community, again, is second to none. It's another wonderful thing we can point to that hasn't been able to be accomplished in the past. And if we could ever coordinate what's happening with Silver Miss Productions, with the Seneca Theater, and with the downtown, I really think we'd have something going for us, and some kind of a guarantee that we'll be able to move on with the development of what's happening in the downtown. Basically, I just want to be supportive of what's happening. A couple of permits may have been a concern, but what were the people doing? They were moving ahead, trying to get open as quickly as possible. In fact, I was even involved in a couple of them trying to move it along. And the process, no matter what you say, is very time-consuming and very difficult and very meticulous. And it has to be from a fire point of view so that people who use those facilities are protected. But the flexibility and working with these people and trying to make it happen and all pull together, I think, is extremely important, because we haven't had to put up the $36 million. We haven't had to put up all the money to make this happen. I think we got a good start, and the report is suggesting that excuse me. We get a master plan for the events for 209. I don't have any problem with that, and I think they're coming in to make a request for a grant rather than using the CIP funds. I don't have a problem with that, and I think that's probably the best way to go in the future for 209, but I don't have any criticism of what happened in the past year and the way they've conducted themselves downtown and the way the council has supported them. I think it's a win-win for everybody, and I support that.
Okay, Councillor Iannone, Mayor Salsi, Councillor Diodati, please.
Thank you. I'm going to be the other flip of the coin now. because I disagree. There wasn't a thing I agreed on there. I will say that 2 council meetings ago, it might even have been the last one, we asked staff to bring us back reports that included the good, the bad, and the ugly. And that's what this report did. It wasn't prettied up. It wasn't made to look good. It didn't create a spin. It told us exactly what we asked them to tell us. Everything. Negativity is there because it is what it is. We are no farther along now without that $36 million to create the utopia that they wanted than we were when it was Lichtman standing at that microphone as opposed to Mordecai Groom. I think we set an unhealthy precedent, and I'm going to tell you, I don't think it's okay not to have followed the permit aspect to get themselves to where they wanted to be. We criticize people for doing that, and now we're going to say it's okay because it's the downtown. That's the criticism the council faced before we campaigned on not putting $33 million downtown, because people said we were giving them special treatment as opposed to other businesses. And in regards to Silver Mist, they're great productions, but they're a tourist attraction. We are not going into a recession. We are in one. While Ottawa might not have their house in order, I think we have to take a stronger look when we get to the budget process to understand we're under the gun here. We're going to have tourist operators that don't have the numbers coming into their attractions standing here saying we bring X amount of people. The people who work for us live here. Well, we've got tens of thousands of tourism operators and employees and staff who live here now, and we're not going to fund those attractions when things get bad. So yes, while it's a great thing for them to have this production and the school kids love it, I'm not about to I'm not going to support putting CIP funds, which, by the way, are tax-supported dollars. So let's not tell you the taxpayers aren't paying for this. The CIP funds comes from our tax base. And if I'm wrong, somebody please stand up and tell me I'm right. Okay. And not stand here and give any objection. We are being criticized for not pointing the fingers back at us. And we're reading a report here that I didn't find one positive aspect in. We have our staff telling us over page after page after page. Actually, it's more highlighted in negativity than it was clear because I didn't find anything good. They're hard to work with. That's page after page after page. They're not consistent, page after page after page. I thought what was really damning was when you get to the back of the report and it gives you the businesses that are on Queen Street that are not in compliance. Are you kidding me? And they're $1.2 million in tax arrears combined for 52 out of 60 properties. I'm sorry, it would be a stretch for me and hypocritical to stand here and pat them on the back and say you're doing a great job. We are going to be short funds in a budget, and they're behind $1.2 million in potential revenues that we could use to improve the rest of the city and to give staff monies to bring capital projects and things that we need to do forward to us. I thought this was probably one of the most negative reports I've ever read. And you go through it, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The properties on Queen Street that are not out of compliance or have some sort of negative figure are properties not owned by Historic Niagara. Those are properties who have applied for our CIP, who have got the money because they've paid their taxes and have put the facade improvements on there. And while I appreciate Councillor Thompson's will to want to get it done, do we get it done by closing our eyes and saying, you know what? Staff gave us a report that's negative. What a crappy spin that is out there. We're going to ignore that and say, let's continue forward. I don't think so. How is Olson Sotil and Broderick and Partners and the other businesses that are on there that are not Historic Niagara doing it? They're not doing it funded by us. I don't know how we could look at this report and not say it's time to rein them in. To me, this says put on a pair of running shoes and run as fast as you can from these people, because you've got application after application that didn't comply and still doesn't comply. And the only saving grace I can say here is we put grant approved subject to taxes, and those properties still don't have the grants because they still haven't paid for them. So I don't know, you know, we're going to get a budget overview tonight. We're going to get our budget binder on the 15th of January, and we can't do anything but now take a sober second look. And it's not because of the lack of will of this council or us wanting to get it done. We freed up CIP monies. They applied for them, but they don't comply because of their own problems, not because of problems we as a council put forward to them. And in our additions to council downstairs, we got another from Bob Bollebrook to Dean and Enrique Gross, and it says, just to let you know, last week we received a $7,000 bill for risk security for the Elvis event. Regarding security, someone has to scrutinize these invoices, as this was the largest security bill for any event. The city also paid a substantial amount to cover Niagara Regional Police expenses at each event. We are going to experience substantial costs related to the rink this winter, i.e. rubber matting, signage, sound system, manpower, etc. Bob. The ice rink's beautiful. It was nice to look in the newspaper and see that people are using it. But how much more do we have to do? And how much more burden are we going to put on the taxpayers to put additional CIP monies in there while they're not complying like every other resident or business or attraction in the city has to do and pay their darn taxes? I don't know how lenient we can be without having the residents say, wait a second, 7 out of 9 of you campaigned on you weren't putting that money downtown. It's 2 years into your term and they still haven't paid their taxes, but they're still asking for concessions. To me, this report's terrible. And I think you have to call Historic Niagara down here and say, look, give us some answers before we go any further. I think it's sad to see the emphasis Councillor Thompson put on that by saying we'll support them, and they can't even support themselves. I think we've given them till we've bled dry. We've given them every opportunity they can. We're going to tell staff, fit us in with the revenues we have to allow us to do what we can in this city, but we certainly can't include bending over backwards for people who can't pay their taxes. So if you're going to make a motion to move this report, I'd like the motion split, because other than asking them for a master plan for downtown, no, actually I would also support the request for funding be received and filed, but as the rest of it, I'd tell them get your house in order before you come back to us, because they certainly don't have that.
There is no motion on the floor currently.
No, I'm sorry. When a motion is made, I'd like them split.
Okay, Mayor Saucy, please.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't see it quite as negatively as some do on council, and I appreciate the positive aspect of what's happening here. I had a chance to discuss this report with the chair of the BIA, and I just wanted to make council aware of some things. First of all, the BIA this year will be looking for, at their annual meeting in January, I believe January 6th is the date it's been called, will be looking for an assessment of their own individuals in excess of $400,000. I think that that's a record amount, and they're certainly prepared to put their money where their mouth is in respect to the downtown BIA levy. That's the BIA functioning as well. When I asked Mrs. Gross about the matter of efficiency, she said, yes, we could have done things probably a little cheaper. We learned by our experience. Certainly there were costs that we now realize that we could have saved some money on, but we certainly put our money ahead of the cities. As far as the tax arrears go, this money, as you know, members of council, is well protected. There's certainly adequate equity in any of those properties that we're talking about that are in arrears. And in fact, the penalties are accruing with a high rate of interest, as you know, that substantially increases the revenue to the city. We don't encourage tax arrears, but the city gets every cent of the taxes owed to it, and rarely, if ever, have we ever lost money on a tax sale if it ever got to that point. I don't think that Mr. Gruen would allow his properties to have that happen. In fact, Mr. Gruen represents the same investors that Mr. Lichtman did as well, and he's just taking a different approach. Now, I wanted to address a couple more of the issues that exist as we have. I understand there was an oversight by staff with regard to the improvement of the properties in respect to the CIP. We know that money, those deficiencies will be corrected. Staff is working on that right now. None of us were happy when we learned that was the issue, but that will certainly be rectified, and no other additional funds will be forwarded unless the matters are in compliance with respect to the applications as they are submitted. So I don't have a problem in respect to that. I appreciate the support that we can give to the downtown. We haven't yet addressed the issues of some of the issues that required the exceptional capital commitments. Those are coming later on. We did expend or made a commitment of $1.2 million to do some studies. I believe there's still some money outstanding or balances in that account that we were going to do our east and west gateway studies and work as well. So I think there's still some money, hopefully, in that fund. Yet, I believe that the downtown BA is putting their money where their mouth is, and they're actually assessing themselves this levy if it goes through in January, which is substantially higher than it ever has been. I think event marketing is key, and I can't tell you, I attended each of those events almost every night. I was here on Saturday night listening to the public saying how impressed they are with what's gone on with really so little. When they look at the facade improvements and what's been done with color and technique, I think you can say that they've accomplished a fair amount without a major amount of construction. So I give credit to where credit is due. I've talked to the retailers. They have a commitment to us. I'm concerned about sustainability. They've talked to me, and I've said to them that they're the draw. They're going to make it happen here. And when people come down here, I'm saying to you, I heard the other night, people are so impressed with what they've seen. They said, we haven't been to this end of the city for a while, and they're very impressed with what's going on. And so we are making strides. As small as they may be, they're one by one, property by property. So I tip my hat to them. That doesn't mean that we open the bank accounts to the BIA or to the downtown properties, but I think we have to give them the support that they've extended. A request to get some help. We maybe not have the capacity this year in terms of our budget restraints, but at the same time they are putting their money where their mouth is. And I'm pleased that some members of council are now addressing that point. I think Jim Diodati, Councillor Diodati, and I were feeling somewhat lost at a time when we were pushing, and we have never gone back to the province or the feds with respect to the request for additional funds. We haven't moved forward in those projects yet because they involve larger capital commitments, as you know, maybe when the traffic is sufficient at the time that will require parking structures and things. That may or may not ever happen, but the point is there were requests, and we weren't always in agreement that that was going to happen immediately anyways. So I hope that the downtown BA can be successful in respect of what they're doing. They're moving along. It's still questionable. The sustainability is still an issue. I am impressed with the businesses and the discussions I've had with the businessmen downtown, and they understand that they're going to be the draw as opposed to us, but they understand the value of event marketing, and they're trying to bring people downtown to show them each time. And they haven't got the right combination yet. They're trying different things, but they're hoping to have maybe more events, maybe on a little smaller scale, but having those events, I think, is having a very positive effect in drawing people to our downtown core. I tip my hat.
Thank you. I have Councillor Diodati and Councillor Wing.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have to say I wholeheartedly agree with the Mayor and with Councillor Thompson's comments here tonight. I think they were right on the money. When Councillor Thompson said that the downtown was dead, I couldn't agree more. I mean, these people have managed to do the unthinkable. You know, we've been told it's easier to give birth than to resurrect the dead. And these people are attempting to resurrect the dead. And I'm going to say quite successfully. And this report, in terms of being negative, I was not sure what report that the council was referring to, but I just highlighted 6 quick points that I thought were somewhat positive, and I'd like to review those quickly through you, Mr. Chair. Springlicious was free to the public. I mean, I saw, I think, just about every city councilor with their families downtown, as well as thousands of people I hadn't seen in years, certainly hadn't seen downtown. I was more concerned the street was going to give way all the way to the people downtown. Second point, outdoor skating rink currently under construction, which will draw more people into the downtown in the coming months. Another thing that this community is lacking, an outdoor skating rink. Third point, longtime merchants were happy to see foot traffic that had long disappeared. These are quoted right from the report. It should be noted that for every dollar provided by the city, more than $2 in other revenue was invested. I'm sure any business person would say that's a great return on investment. The developer has recently brought in associates that are more familiar with the building application process. And hopefully this will address the deficiency. And yes, we had a little bit of a mess up in terms of building code infractions, but they're working to address that. And ironically, there's some of the most successful businesses we have downtown right now, Mr. Chair. Balzac's. Anyone hasn't had a chance to go down there and experience that coffee shop, you're missing out. There's some real solid, we've got the new bistro downtown. 2 examples of some very successful businesses, Your Worship, Mr. Chair, that we're happy to have downtown. And also another point, the major developers put a lot of resources into building improvements. I think it's safe to say that this is a fairly positive report, and it's also important to note that the developer did not have a chance to comment on any of this report, or did not have any input in this. If I'm mistaken, correct me. But as far as I know, this is written entirely and wholly by staff, and it's our staff's opinion, which is great. It's what we want. But right now, downtown is still vulnerable, and we need to give them support if they're going to be successful. They've redeveloped 24 properties already. When's the last time that happened in our downtown? It's an area that I was embarrassed. It was more like a leper colony than anything. And now, yeah, we've got some growing pains, and we're changing, and we're developing, and we're getting better at what we're doing. We don't have a lot of experience in the city at redeveloping downtowns. Our staff don't, and the developer doesn't. This is new for all of us. We're learning together. And as far as the report goes, I think it did a good job. It summed up the good and it summed up the bad. But for the most part, I'd say it's very good. If someone has a better idea, I'd love to hear it. But the way I see it now is the way this downtown is being redeveloped, instead of us subsidizing, it's going to be contributing to the tax base. We're certainly on that path, and I'm real proud to be supportive of what's happening. Thank you very much.
Okay, Councillor Wing.
Thank you. I'll start by correcting a couple of my colleagues. Councillor Thompson suggested that the CIP is not funded by the general taxpayer. Actually, it is. The grants, the loans, the phased-in increase in taxes as a result of improvements, that's all funded by the general taxpayer. And Mayor Salsi suggested that, we're pretty well secured.
Point of order, I did not say that.
Okay, thank you.
Said the
Yes,
CIP. Said the CIP.
Well, I heard something different than what you think you said. Anyhow, Mayor Salsi said we're very well secured with the equity in the property. It's very rare to not be able to get that. Well, on tonight's council agenda, we actually have a report showing that certain properties should be written off failed tax sales. So it may not be as secure as we think. Anyhow, to get to the report.
Absolutely, Mayor Salsi.
Just a point of clarification, Mr. Chair, those properties are not even in the downtown core. We're not talking about apples to apples. There are certainly rural properties that are much different, no cash flow, no buildings on them, much different situation entirely.
What I heard was that it's very rare for us to not get our money out of them. So, I just find it very ironic that such a rare situation actually happens to be on tonight's agenda. Anyhow, there has been a tendency, according to the writer of the report, on the part of the major property owner, Historic Niagara, to ignore requirements. There has also been a pervading erroneous message conveyed to tenants that they did not require permits or licenses of any kind. It should be noted that staff was very lenient during the summer months with downtown signage that was contrary to our sign bylaw. So there's been quite a few problems. The thing that I take most to heart, though, is that monies taken for the events eliminate monies that could go into the programs originally intended through the CIP. Now, I have always been a great supporter of the CIP process. I believe it stimulates investment, and I have supported this CIP, and the Main Ferry CIP, and the Brownfield CIP. I support all those. I think those are a great tool. Staff is recommending to us that the CIP not be used to fund the events for 2009. And they are absolutely right in recommending that. CIPs are intended for bricks and mortar, and that's what we need to stick to. I will move recommendations 2 and 3 of the report.
Do we have a seconder to that? Seconder to recommendations 2 and 3, seconded by Councillor Ioannoni. Councillor Ioannoni.
Thank you, and I also want to correct a couple of my fellow councillors. The two to my left, Councillor Diodati and Mayor Salsi, are the only two people around this council table who thought it was okay to use $33 million of tax money downtown.
33?
33, until the residents said, I don't think so. And that's why the 7 of us are sitting around this table, because that's what we campaigned on. If I'm not mistaken, I remember we created those ads. And I also want to highlight, as my fellow councillor highlights successes downtown, he uses Balzac's coffee shop. No occupancy permit issued yet. Charges are pending. They constructed without a permit. A failure to comply with an order to comply. Failure to comply for occupancy. Signed permit outstanding. If we're going to use highlights here, we should use successful highlights, not people who aren't complying. And the mayor made a comment, just to piggyback on Janice's, that we will not lose out on a property sale. Well, I mean, the council meeting I missed, you had them come and talk to you about the lack of sales in real estate, lack of housing starts. All of us read newspapers from Globe and Mail, National Post, Toronto Star, that are telling us buildings like that are not selling. I quite frankly do not want to be in possession of a bunch of buildings that we can't get rid of. we probably missed the boat where we should have raised the whole downtown and put a new arena there to stimulate growth, but I mean, we missed that boat. But I'm going to tell you, if you can't pay your taxes, you can't pay the penalty fees also. So if you lose that property, I highly doubt Historic Niagara is going to be standing here bending over backwards to pay their penalty fees when they're $1.2 million outstanding. So let's not paint a pretty picture here of something that doesn't exist. I know they'd love the spin to be candy apples and little candy hearts, but you know what? With this instant, with this company, that doesn't exist with us. This is our 4th year with Historic Niagara. For those of us who were here in the council beforehand, this is not news to us. What do they say? Shame on you, make a mistake, shame on me once, make a second mistake, shame on you. What are we, stupid? People at home got to be laughing at us saying, how many years are they going to watch us do the same thing and have the same results?
Are you looking to staff for an answer?
No.
Okay.
No, well, I'm sure the residents are at home screaming the answer at the TV. But I'm saying, it is the same company, it's just a different front man. And we are no farther along now, short of handing them $33 million. That utopia of a downtown is not going to work.
Okay, there is a motion on the floor to approve parts 2 and 3 of the recommendation. Questions or comments to that motion? Councillor Thompson, please.
Yeah. The Chair, I think Mr. Lococo left, but he was asking about support for Silver Mist Productions. I believe that Silver Mist Productions is a private business enterprise. The municipality, in my opinion and from my experience, does not have the opportunity to fund or give grants to private sector businesses. Is that an accurate statement, or is that not?
Yes, that's true.
So the request would be actually illegal for the council to consider?
That is right, Councillor. We are, though, assisting Silver Mist in the restraint we're showing with respect to the production facility they're currently using. We're exercising considerable restraint with respect to the zoning problems at that site. So the city is assisting Silver Mist at this time in its current location.
But I'm talking about a request for funding. That,
yes, I'm just saying we are.
yeah. Well, I would hope you would do that.
We're doing the best we can.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, do any other councillors have any questions or comments to the motion? Parts 2 and 3 of the recommendation. Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you. Are there any other further recommendations with this report? Mr. Arifida.
I'm not really sure why you discounted number 1, because number 1 is really the important recommendation in this report. It's saying do not use the CIP monies and have them put forward a plan.
The motion on the floor was for parts 2 and 3 to be approved. I took the motion.
Yeah, but I'm saying that you have to deal, the first part of the recommendation, you have to deal with it, or you can discount it. It's up to you as council.
Councillor Wing.
I'll answer why I deliberately left that out. I was acting on the staff recommendation that the CIP not be used to fund the events for 2009 by asking Celebrate Old Downtown to submit a master plan for the events for 2009. You are encouraging them and suggesting that we will continue to use the CIP funds for events. That's not my intention.
No,
I will not support that.
That's not the intention of the report at all. In fact, it's the opposite intention. This third part about the staff review CIP application procedures has nothing to do with the events. It actually has to do with the scenario that was referred to at the beginning. How did they get their grant when they hadn't applied for the building permit yet? That's what that aspect deals with. The first aspect is actually going to the heart of what you're asking for, which is that we wouldn't be taking any of the events money out of the CIP funds. We already asked them to submit a request under the budget, which they did. So we're asking to further that request that they bring us back a plan similar to what we asked for any of the other permissive grants that take place.
In the last paragraph on page 2, the very first line does say, as indicated, it is staff's recommendation that the CIP not be used to fund the events for 2009.
Right, and that's what I'm going on. And the reason I did move the third recommendation is I didn't want to see the situation arise again where CIP monies are being received by someone who has not got the
Right,
permits
but
they're
number one
supposed to.
is getting to what you're asking for. Number 3 has nothing to do with the
I'm not
events.
comfortable that it does.
Well,
Okay, I have Mayor Salsi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I certainly concur, and I understand the intent of the staff recommendation. So I'd be prepared to move item number 1, that Celebrate Old Downtown submit a master plan for events of 2009. It doesn't commit us to anything, gives us the information we need to decide what course of action we may take in the future.
Okay,
So
part 1
I'll
of the
make that.
recommendation has been moved by Mayor Salsi, seconded by Councillor Thompson. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Show Councillor Wing opposed, please. Thank you. Under budget presentation, we have an overview of the 2009 budget, and I would ask Mr. Dulovic, please, to take the podium. I'm sorry, Councillor.
I'm sorry. We have 2 check presentations that are going to leave.
Yeah, why don't
Can
we
we
do that?
move them ahead before we go into the budget presentation?
Absolutely.
Thank you. It is a different.
yeah, it's a different meeting. Close this meeting.
You're going to leave.
I don't mind.
That they leave?
No, I don't mind. I don't mind that we adjourn this. Makes no difference to me.
Make a motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn.
Ted is. Motion to adjourn and move into the next meeting.